Welcome to Lou's Lab. Today we're going to be talking about the Pan OS 8.1 on how to set up a tap or port mirroring. So under there we're going to go under Network, the Network tab here. And then under Interfaces we're going to designate which interface we're going to set up as a tap. So I already did that earlier just testing this out. So we're just going to click on the interface and then on the pull down menu, because the Palo Alto acts as since it's a layer 7, you can define what these ports are. So we can define them as a port, an HA, a V-wire, which would be inline, so like a tab would be like we're using this as an IDS. A V-wire would be like using it as a IPS. And then you can set up as a layer 2, layer 3, so if you want to do switching or routing, you would use, layer 2 and layer 3 to do that. So we're going to set it up for a tap for right now. So here we're also going to need to set up a zone. So that's the two things that you need to set up when you're setting up an interface to do something. You need to set it up for what type it is and a zone. So in this particular case, we don't have a zone configured yet. So that's all right, because we can go right down here and say new zone, and it'll take us right to the page. And then here we're just going to call it a tap for monitoring. And then if we want to set up some logging, we can set up log forwarder. Here we're going to add what interface, since it only showed us one interface because we only have one interface assigned as a tap. And then here we can set up zone protection. We can enable buffer flow protection. We can exclude addresses that we don't want to monitor, or include addresses that we only want to monitor. But here's one important part here: enabling user ID. So if you want to map usernames to IPs, you have to have this enabled, and then you also have some additional software you have to configure on your network to capture the login ID information. Since I don't have that set up at this point, we're going to leave that unchecked. And then from here, we're just going to go in and hit OK. So now we have essentially a zone and an interface. So we go here, we can see this light is green because it is plugged into my switch. So we have access, so it can see the network traffic. Here, if we go to zones, here you can see the zone. You can see that it doesn't have protection, packet buffer protection, logging enabled, included in networks. So by default, you can see it's any, and we're not excluding any. So now at this point, what we need to do is apply the configuration change, or commit. So here it shows you basically the Palo Alto breaks it down into two portions: policies and objects, device and network. So we want to make a change. So we're going to say OK. We can change all of it. We can even put some basic information in there. And then we're going to hit apply. All right. So that is part of the steps that we need to complete creating a tap. So now we've enabled the tap. So now the next step, for us to see the traffic, even though we have the tap configured, we've got to make a policy. So we're going to go into the policy area. Under security, we're going to go add, and then we're just going to give it a name. So we're giving it a name of a rule. So in this point, since we're only doing very small rules, it doesn't matter, but in a larger environment, you definitely want to think about your naming convention. So I'm just going to call it a tap, and then we can put some additional description information, which is good because you may need to come back later down the line and figure out why did I make this. And then here we're going to go to source. We're going to pull up our only zone. So this is how we essentially do these things. We're going to do zones, user, destination, applications, services, and actions. That's how we treat everything. So we're going to do a zone, and then if we wanted to monitor a particular IP address or a group of IPs or all of it, we would go there. So you would do broad. So you do a broad spectrum here and a narrow scope. And then again, if we're using that user agent, we could apply users. We can apply that rule to a particular user. Here, we're just going to go with any traffic going out. And then by default, any application. And we're going to just say, hey, any service. And then here we're going to allow. So this is where you would do your allow, deny, and we can create some additional profiles. So here we're just going to do some additional logging. So traditionally you want to do logging at the end, not at the beginning. You use logging at the beginning or at the start when you're trying to troubleshoot, figure out what's going on. You want to do it there, but in general the good practice is to do it at the end. And then if we had a syslog server that we want to send this data to, we could then forward it to a log server or a PAN or a panorama. And then we can do other things like scheduling, set up some QoS. So depending on how we want to handle this traffic. So we're going to hit OK. And then again, we got to hit commit to apply the changes. So now as we hit apply, we should be able to go to monitor. If I can click on it. And now we can see some traffic. Here we can see we have a couple machines going. You can see we have some machines doing some DNS resolving. We can even take it to the next level here. In here we can go for additional things we want to see. So we have additional columns, so we can even go by, if I can get this thing to hover over correctly. So we can go all these are by default. We can even go by byte sent, source action, counts, over decrypting, countries, so we can even see what countries we're resolving things to. So we can see here so here we can see I have some stuff resolving to Canada, some stuff just resolving back and forth as a broadcast. I got something going to Korea. So we can see a couple different things here. So that is a quick way of looking at how to set up port monitoring. All right, that's the basics. See you next time.